I've asked politely once and now I'll say it impolitely. Shut up, please. Try and have a game of darts up here.
Yesterday, at the European Darts Trophy in Göttingen, Germany, referee Hugh Ware stopped mid-match and warned the crowd about their behaviour during the second round match between Stephen Bunting and Springer, while MC Filip Brzezinski addressed the troublemakers directly from the stage. To those 4 people, we say you're not welcome here. We don't want this.
Es sind 3 oder 4 Nasen, die mit ihrer Pfeiferei ein großartiges Spiel kaputt gemacht haben. Diesen 4 Leuten von 4000 sagen wir, ihr seid hier nicht willkommen. Wir wollen das nicht haben. Wir wollen das nicht haben.
2 officials, 1 match, 1 clear message. And the fact that it happened in Germany told you everything about where professional darts currently stands with its own crowd problem. This was not the first time a referee had to step in, not even close. The whistling, the booing, the interference during throws, it has been building for years across venues from Alexandra Palace to Glasgow to Wolverhampton, and the referees tasked with managing it have discovered, almost without exception, that doing anything at all tends to make it worse. Today we walk through exactly what referees can and cannot do, the most damaging moments where they had to act, and why the sport keeps wrestling with this problem despite everyone from the PDC to retired legends agreeing that something has to give. The person calling the scores on stage, the referee, also serves as the match official. The same individual who announces 180 carries the authority to pause play, issue warnings, dock legs, or forfeit a match entirely. Completely separate from that role sits the MC, the master of ceremonies, who introduces players and fires up the crowd, and that person holds zero authority over match play. Referee power flows from the DRA, the Darts Regulation Authority, which governs every PDC tournament. The rulebook hands referees genuinely broad authority over players, running through a 4-stage process. First warning, second warning, leg docked, match forfeited. Here's the thing though, every one of those sanctions targets players specifically. The DRA contains no explicit provisions giving referees formal scored match authority over crowd behaviour, which means no rule exists allowing a referee to award a leg because someone whistled in the stands. What referees can do is address the crowd verbally and request that venue security remove specific individuals. That is the full extent of their tools. And venue security brings its own limitation, as former PDC referee Russ Bray revealed with characteristic directness. Our security boys are only allowed onto the perimeter, they're not allowed into the arena. When a whistler sits somewhere in the middle of 3,000 people, finding and removing that person runs close to impossible. The PDC's formal position, established in February 2025, places primary crowd control responsibility on venue operators rather than the PDC itself. What this creates is a structural problem that nobody has solved. Everyone agrees, whistling during a throw is unacceptable, but the people whose job it is to stop it in real time have largely concluded that opening their mouths makes everything worse. The incident that finally forced the PDC to issue its first ever formal statement on crowd behaviour happened on February 13, 2025 at the Ovio Hydro in Glasgow during Premier League Night 2. The final between Luke Littler and Luke Humphries was drowning in noise throughout the evening, with persistent whistling hitting both players across multiple matches. During the final, referee Kirk Bevins reached for his microphone and told them to stop. What came out was 2 words: stop whistling. Littler described what happened next. Kirk told them to be quiet and it got even worse, and then I missed doubles and Luke breaks at 5-4. I'm just like, Kirk, you've made it worse for me there. I'm 5-4 down. Bevins acknowledged it himself afterward, posting online. The crowd just get worse when referees address the crowd. The following day, the PDC published a formal public statement, the first of its kind. The PDC wishes to strongly reiterate that it does not condone any behaviour which can disrupt an event, such as whistling or booing when players are throwing. Littler had filed a formal complaint. Sky Sports pundit Abigail Davies put it plainly on air. Yet again, well done to those who paid good money to go and watch the best darts players in the world and actively contributed to them not delivering their absolute best by whistling. None of that fixed anything. What it did establish, on the record, was that the PDC could no longer treat crowd interference as an acceptable side effect of the party they had built. Not every referee intervention collapsed into chaos, and the best counterexample, before yesterday's Göttingen warning, came at the Grand Slam of Darts in Wolverhampton in November 2025 during the quarter-final between Gerwyn Price and Ricky Evans. Persistent whistling was coming from behind the stage throughout the match, and referee Hugh Ware stopped mid-score call, turned to face the crowd and delivered this directly. "Would you stop doing that, please? Seriously." The room applauded, players appreciated it. Online, people called Ware the only referee with enough guts to call the whistleblowers to order. Price smiled and kept throwing, winning the match 16-9, and Ware's reputation inside the sport grew considerably from that single moment. What was different here compared to Glasgow? Tone is the most obvious answer. Ware's delivery landed as a command rather than a plea, authoritative rather than apologetic, and the room responded to that distinction. What happened yesterday in Göttingen was Ware applying the same approach on the European tour. And the fact that he now has to do it in Germany as well means the whistling problem has crossed borders entirely. The sport itself is carrying it everywhere it goes. 1 month before Glasgow, another incident demonstrated the opposite failure. Not a referee making things worse by intervening, but a referee barely intervening at all. During the Grand Slam of Darts in November 2024, Mike De Decker faced Luke Littler in the last 16, with audible whistling targeting De Decker whenever he approached his doubles. De Decker turned to referee Kirk Bevins during the match and asked directly for help. Bevins' response was a quiet "thank you" aimed at the crowd. De Decker lost the match, and afterward his words were controlled but pointed. Booing and whistling shouldn't be normal. Former player Vincent van der Voort took the critique further. When Mike asks the referee to take action and nothing is done, that's a mistake. Van der Voort named the contrast with George Noble, the long-serving referee who had built a reputation as the strictest official in the sport, saying Noble doesn't hesitate to involve security and remove troublemakers. Noble himself reflecting on his career upon retirement after the 2026 World Championship final offered this: "You don't have to be the star of the show, you don't have to make controversial decisions, just let the game flow." He added a parting observation: "There's certain referees who think it's about them." What this sequence exposed is a tension no rulebook can fully resolve. Do nothing and fail the player asking for help. Step in and risk inflaming 3,000 people who are already restless. The right call depends almost entirely on the room, the moment, and the person holding the microphone, none of which can be determined in advance. No story in the history of darts crowd interference carries as many consequences for how the sport changed its own rules as the Gerwyn Price saga, and everything traces back to a single night. November 18th, 2018, Wolverhampton, the Grand Slam of Darts final. Price beat Gary Anderson 16-13. Anderson physically shoved him during the penultimate leg, and when Price lifted the trophy, the crowd booed him through the entire presentation. Price described it years later: "It's all from that one game. I won the tournament, and the crowd started booing, even when I was lifting the trophy up. It hasn't really stopped since." The DRA fined Price a total of £21,500 for his conduct across that tournament, and Anderson received a formal warning. What followed was years of hostility across the tour. Dublin in October 2019 became what Price called his rock bottom, losing a lead against Dave Chisnell as the crowd turned and admitting afterward, "I was thinking, do I want to do this anymore? Is it worth it?" In Leicester in October 2021, Price called a World Grand Prix crowd absolutely pathetic on stage. At the 2022 World Championship, Sky Sports muted its own broadcast after the crowd directed a slur targeting Welsh people at Price, with presenter Emma Payton issuing an on-air apology. Then came January 1st, 2023. Trailing 3-1 in sets in his World Championship quarter-final against Gabriel Clemens, Price left the stage and returned wearing bright orange industrial ear defenders, unprecedented in professional darts. The crowd response was enormous. Price won the first leg back, mouthed, "I can't hear you," at the crowd, then switched to earplugs and lost 5-1. Sky Sports pundit Wayne Mardle delivered the interpretation that has stuck. When you put the over-elaborate ear defenders on, they are not for you, they are for the crowd. The PDC's response was a rule change banning ear defenders entirely. Players may not wear earphones, headphones, or headphone-type ear defenders during play. In-ear earplugs remain permitted. The only real self-help option a player had against hostile crowd noise had been closed off by regulation, with nothing offered in its place. Price later said, "I would do exactly the same thing again, but did it block out the crowd? No. If anything, it was 10 times worse. But I was just trying to prove a point. Understanding why referee intervention is so difficult in darts requires going back to how the crowd atmosphere got built in the first place. When the PDC World Championship moved from the Circus Tavern in Purfleet to Alexandra Palace in 2008, the event changed its nature entirely. The Circus Tavern held around 800 people and operated as a large pub. Alexandra Palace holds around 3,300 per session, and the Christmas and New Year scheduling filled those seats with office parties, stag nights, and festive social groups, many of them casual fans on a night out, rather than people who could name every player on tour. Former PDC pro Matt Edgar gave what has become the accepted origin story for crowd whistling, and it points directly at Phil Taylor. I remember an interview Phil Taylor did when he was asked about the noise. He goes, "I don't mind the noise. The one thing I can't stand is the whistling." Then from there, it was like, right, we need to get on his back now and annoy Phil Taylor by whistling. The tactic outlasted Taylor himself and became a generalized tool for disruption. Taylor was not above working the crowd against opponents either. During the 2016 World Match Play Final, he actively encouraged the crowd to perform the Icelandic thunderclap while Van Gerwen was throwing. A 2023 peer-reviewed study published in Scientific Reports confirmed what players had long claimed. Real crowds produce a statistically significant negative impact on checkout percentage. The effect was real, not perceived. Nobody in darts has been more direct about the limits of referee crowd management than Russ Bray, who served as the PDC's most prominent referee for decades before stepping back from full-time duties in January 2024 and earning a place in the PDC Hall of Fame. After Glasgow, Bray addressed the intervention question without softening. "The worst thing you can say as a referee is, 'Ladies and gentlemen, please don't whistle, because all the idiots will start whistling.' That's the mentality of them." His analogy for what whistling actually represents cuts straight to the point. It's their work. If someone was laying bricks, you wouldn't go down there and play with his cement to put him off. And on enforcement, the answer was the same limitation cited before: security confined to the perimeter, unable to move through the arena seating to reach the source of the disruption. Former MC John McDonald had tried addressing the crowd directly during a session break at the Grand Slam on at least one documented occasion. Bevans confirmed the result. He addressed the crowd in the break once regarding this, and they got worse. The pattern runs almost unbroken. When a referee or MC has spoken to the crowd about whistling, the crowd has either continued or intensified, wherein Wolverhampton stands as the primary counterexample, and now Göttingen. But even those moments may say more about his specific tone than about any general lesson that transfers reliably to other situations. By late 2025 and into 2026, the crowd problem had found a new focal point. Gerwyn Price was receiving noticeably warmer treatment, and stepping into the complicated role he had vacated was Luke Littler, world number 1, world champion at 17, and someone whose confidence on stage generates the same pantomime villain dynamic that had followed Price for years. At the 2026 World Championship on December 29, 2025, crowds booed Littler during his fourth round match against Rob Cross, and his post-match on-stage response became one of the most replayed moments in recent darts history. "Am I bothered? Really? Am I bothered? You guys pay for the tickets and you pay for my prize money, so thank you. Thank you for my money. Thank you for booing me." 2 days later, his adjustment was immediate and deliberate. He clapped the crowd on his way to the quarter-final stage, acknowledged them, and was cheered. He explained it simply: "As soon as I got on stage, I clapped everyone just so they knew I want them on my side again." Former world champion John Part offered a warning that cut straight to the point. You never ever want them against you, because it can be a long and lonely road. Just ask Gerwyn Price. Ricardo Pietreczko, speaking during the 2026 World Championship, delivered what might be the clearest articulation any player has offered of why whistling crosses a line that booing does not. The booing is not the problem, but the whistling is. With the whistling, the concentration is missed in the moment, and I think every player hates it. The PDC has formally acknowledged that crowd interference is a problem. The February 2025 statement exists on the record. The DRA made a rule change directly because of a crowd interference incident. The sport's most experienced referees are on record calling for action, and players from Price to Littler to De Decker to Pietreczko have all stated publicly that something needs to change. John McDonald named whistling during a throw probably the worst crime you can commit at a darts event more than 15 years ago. The problem is worse now than it has ever been, and as of yesterday, it is happening in Germany too. Verbal address from referees usually backfires, and the exceptions carry no clear transferable formula. Security cannot enter the arena seating. The PDC places crowd control responsibility on venues. The DRA gives referees extensive power over player behavior and almost nothing formal to deploy against the audience. And the commercial identity of the sport, the party atmosphere, the alcohol, the Christmas scheduling, the prize money that only exists because those tickets keep selling, makes any demand for a quieter crowd an argument against the product itself. The pantomime villain dynamic enriched darts commercially for decades. Peter Manley embraced the booze and turned them into an exhibition career. Price was driven to industrial ear defenders and had the rule changed to take even that option away. De Decker asked the referee for help and received a quiet "thank you" directed at a crowd of thousands. Littler, world number 1, stepped off the Oki mid-throw in Belfast because someone in the crowd picked their moment. The referee on stage holds the microphone, the authority, and the proximity. What remains missing after every incident and every statement and every rule revision is a method that actually works. Tell them to stop and they start. Say nothing and nothing changes. That is exactly where professional darts still finds itself today. And if yesterday in Göttingen is any indication, the answer is nowhere close.